Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. Another episode of the Hollywood Wrap Up. We're going to talk about today a little love for the Lantern Corps with HBO Max. We're going to talk about some of the delays and pushbacks and cancellations that COVID keeps causing for the year 2020. And we're going to look at some of the things that Marvel is up to as they try to sneak out some multiverse on us. That and more right after the jump. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Finally, finally, the Lanterns are getting some type of love within the DC universe. The bastard child, if you will, of the DC comics and DC film and television. Again, we've seen Batman over and over again. We've seen Superman over and over again. And even with the Justice League, we've seen hints of that there's a Lantern ring floating around, but we never actually got to see any Green Lanterns because, unfortunately, the only thing that we got in film form was Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. And from that point on, everyone was like, well, let's just bury them away and not talk to them for a while. Which sucks if you're a Lantern fan like I am. I'm also a Batman fan, so I get something. But Green Lantern is, you get those space cops and kind of like, come on, guys, let's do these and let's do these right. So finally, HBO Max has decided that they're going to give a full series order for 10 episodes for HBO Max for the new Green Lantern Corps show that's going to be produced by Greg Berlanti and show ran and written and by Mark Guggenheim, who also handles the Arrowverse stuff. Now, there's some calls for pause because both of those names were also attached and written and producers on the Green Lantern film. Yeah. So there's some good and some bad. I think you also have to know that with films, there are more people and more cooks in the kitchen. So I hope that the cooks that were in there who messed up the recipe are not these two. We'll know that soon enough. Also, there's some calls for pause because if you're handling the Arrowverse, unfortunately, those shows got a little bit watered down and long in tooth. And I haven't watched an Arrowverse show in probably about 2 years, other than the episodes when everybody's teaming up together. They ran their course for me. And so I hope that the writers and creators and Berlanti and them can all make something that's a little bit more edgier, a little bit more in line with what I want for HBO Max. I also think the idea of not going what a normal network expects with 21 to 23 episodes and doing 10, you can kind of truncate and hit home more your story as opposed to having about 14 episodes of filler that don't really matter. I think you can tighten that up and make a better story. Also, news for this show is that the people that they're speaking of, the lanterns that they're choosing, it seems to be Alan Scott, Jessica Cruz, Guy Gardner, and talking about Kilowog and Sinestro. So they are smart, I think, in talking about some of the lesser known, although Guy is pretty damn special, but talking about some of the lesser known um, lanterns. Also, some diversity in it, with Alan Scott being gay and Jessica Cruz being Hispanic. So you create a show that has many different versions of what the Lantern are. You can kind of get the word out of what the Lantern Corps is about, put Sinestro on the table, and do it in the more long form terms. I think one of the problems with the film was that they tried to give so much exposition, so much information in a dump, and it just that's not what the film that's not what this character can do or should have done in a 2 hour film, where I think an entire series can kind of explain the world a lot better. Also, I know a lot of people are like, what about the big three? Leaving Hal, Kyle, and John Stewart off the board allows those guys to be used for films or to come in season two if need be to tie in. But I think it's smart to leave those guys off the board, build the Green Lantern brand up a bit so that it's not becoming still this laughing stock. In some sad news, we've had a lot of cancellations in TV world for because of the COVID virus. Stumptown was canceled a couple weeks back, saying that they just didn't have enough money to sustain keeping those sets alive. I call BS a little bit, but whatever. But sometimes it's also still trying to find another network to come back to because it was ABC's highest rated new show, so it's odd that they just canceled the plug on that. But the big one this week was G.L.O. being canceled, and that hurt my heart because Betty Gilpin was amazing on that show, and all those girls, all those women were fantastic on it as well. And it's a really, really well done show. They had just gotten into finishing. I believe they finished one episode and a half. They were starting production on the second episode, but it just became the reasoning they're saying is because it became too expensive to keep those sets together and have those women. Because of the way you're shooting, you're going to have to elongate that shooting process because they are wrestling and they're on top of each other. There's a lot of things that just don't give to the way that the world is being done specifically for shooting. So they're canceling it. I think it sucks. I wish there was we were given as an audience person who was deeply invested. We were given some type of a finale. I do hope that Mark Maron gets his wish and we do get like a 2 hour film to sort of wrap some things up because I think that's a it's hard always hard to get into a show or get invested into a show that then all of a sudden abruptly gets canceled and you don't have that closure. In film news, we have a couple of pushbacks already. Bond has now pushed from what originally was April of this year to now it is a landing and was going to be Christmas, but no one really believed that. Actually, I'm sorry, Thanksgiving. No one believes that, but it's now officially pushed into the April of 2021, and Dune, to my supreme sadness. If anyone's seen the trailer reaction on this channel, I was all in. That was those two are the two movies that I was looking for. Both moved to 2021. So that leaves just one film hanging on for dear life in 2020, and that's Wonder Woman 1984. There are rumors that it's going to HBO Max. Then Patty Jenkins comes out and says, "Nah, that ain't happening, and we're going to probably we're standing pat, and like I want this to have a theatrical release." I don't know how many more times you can keep pushing this film back. I do think they have an avenue. They're testing the waters. HBO, Warner Brothers are testing the waters with Witches, the Anne Hathaway film that was supposed to have a theatrical release is now getting HBO Max to see if that at least upticks the subscription rates. But I know that I would say within the next 2 to 3 weeks we're going to get some type of announcement that Wonder Woman 1984 is not staying there. That's the last major release of the year as Soul for Disney slash Pixar has also decided to go to Disney Plus, not behind a paywall like Mulan, not a subscription thing, but just going to do it like they did Onward and just put it on Disney Plus on Christmas. So there's some good things and the bad things, but we eventually will get back into theaters with things I would imagine that in this year of 2020, it ain't happening, Captain. I will say this: that Marvel got out of there with Black Widow, and they're putting Scarlet out this year. But they've been the guys that have been just actively casting their stuff. They got their She-Hulk now. They got their Miss Marvel and Imani Vellani newcomer. So they are in full casting mode and just building for the future. Speaking of the future, we got a note that said Benedict Cumberbatch will be reprising his role of Doctor Strange in the new Spider-Man 3, which in itself not that big of a news. Like, cool. These Marvel folks jump films and they're in each other's films all the time. Nothing to see there. But earlier in the week, we got word that Jamie Foxx would be returning to Spider-Man 3 as Electro. And people got a little confused, me being one of them. One, got confused because do we really want that? Because he was in the Spider-Man that wasn't that good. And his Electro was whatever. But he's a really good actor. But then you hear that Benedict is going to be in there, and then you start putting checks and balances and this and this and there, and then you're saying WandaVision is doing this, and you know the full title of Doctor Strange's movie, and you're like, oh, we're going to start dealing with some multiverses, and I'm hoping, I think you guys all are too, that we can get a world where we can get uh, Garfield, Maguire, and Holland all together doing the little point thing that Spider-Man does to each other. I think we'll all be in a better place. I think we're going to get some uh, multiverse stuff, and it might be a smart way to sort of fold in the X-Men without saying that they have never been around or have not been there the entire time. It's an easy cheat code, and I think it's probably going to be the way to go. I'm just saying. And then lastly, for my Disney Plus fans, if you've gone to your page lately, the Marvel section has been redone, reorganized for the better. They have, because it became sort of a cumbersome way to try to search for any of those movies. So they've now listed them and put them in the forms of phases. Phase 1, you have your Iron Man 2, so on and so forth. Phase 2, and then subsequently Phase 3. They also have an option where you can timeline order them so that they're in chronological order in the way that they actually occur. I've already done that. I've done that on this when the shutdown first started. My wife and I, we went back through all Marvel films and did that ourselves. So kudos to them for joining on and finally doing it. But that's where all those films are, minus obviously the Spider-Man films and the Incredible Hulk movie, because of pre-existing contract negotiations and stuff. But the big news in that is that they've also given a label to all the films that are not MCU films. They're now calling the non-MCU films like Electro and the X-Men movies, Blade if it ever gets on there. They're calling it the Marvel Legacy movies. So these are what they're branding all the movies that aren't in their wheelhouse, aren't for them, aren't theirs, but they are on the network now. They're calling them the Marvel Legacy movies, which is a cool thing to do, to not ignore them. They are there, some of them better than not, most of them not. Fantastic Four, but you now have the option to watch them, and they now have a branding so that you don't get them confused, because there are a lot of people who are just the regular folks, the not super nerds, that don't know that there's a difference between Marvel flipping pages saying Marvel and it being a Marvel MCU or Marvel Studios film. So that's it this week. A lot of little news here and there, some casting stuff, some sad news, but specifically for me and all of us Green Lantern fans, we have a beacon of hope. There's something at the end of the road, and we can hopefully get to a point where we get something that presents the Green Lantern Corps in a way that I think we can all be excited for and puts them on the map to be on the level. They're one of the big four, big five, with the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern should be right there. We shouldn't be seeing Aquaman before Lantern. That's it. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. You can hit us up on email at hollywoodalreadydid@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at hollywoodadi. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. We also have a sister podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore, where we talk about the classic films like Weird Science or Back to the Future, and we discuss what those films did back in the day that they might not be able to get away with doing today. And it's a fun little show, sometimes serious, sometimes comedy, but it's a show that we kind of discuss the classics. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours?